Hello, loves. Welcome back. Today, we are talking about a subject that is so dear to my heart: parenting. I absolutely adore children, and from a very young age, I had a child on my hip. With me being the youngest of a super large family, there was always a baby to care for. So, in fact, I was an aunt before I was ever even born. I actually have a nephew who's 3 months older than me, and we were in the same kindergarten class. So, for anyone that thinks I'm a little weird, I had to come into the planet embracing weird. Growing up in Missouri in a huge Mormon family with something that was very different. And strange to people, having such a big family for one, and then being Mormon was also very different for people living out of state of Utah. But I have always been a nurturer and had such a special place in my heart for babies, kids, and teens. And I've had a lot of training from the very start. So, right now, we're hearing a lot about our children struggling with the state of the world today. So, by the end of today's episode, I hope you experience some ahas with some things that can really help support you and your children during these current challenging times. First off, I have to say, I am not a perfect parent. In fact, this has been something that has held me back from, talking about parenting for many, many years, because I know that I've made a lot of mistakes, or what I have viewed as mistakes in the past as a parent. It's my most sacred role. It's the thing that I feel like we are the most hard on ourselves for, is our parenting. And it's something that, you know, it's a sure way to get someone either defensive or crying quickly if you attack them as a parent. I recently watched an episode of the sorry, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I watched it. I wouldn't normally watch that show, but because it was Salt Lake, and because um, my husband knows someone on there very well, then we watched it. And there was, this woman who's very, very strong, and she didn't show a lot of emotion. It's like, wow, does anything bother her? And one of the other ladies made a comment to her about her parenting, and boy, did I see that dagger just go into her heart. And she immediately started crying, and I was like, oh, that's it, because that is the part for us that really, really, I think we hold very near and dear to our hearts. And our children are so important to us, and so many times we're very, very hard on ourselves. So I was able to give lots of advice about many things that I have learned over the years, but speaking publicly about parenting, it was something that I did resist on, because I know I'm not a perfect parent. So I have four amazing children. I have two in college and two in elementary. So, although I have, made several mistakes along the way, I have had some different experiences. I've been a single mom for 6 years. I have a blended family. I've gone back to work, leaving my very small children at home to be cared for by someone else. At the time, I had a 2-week old and a 2-year old, and I went back to work and left them in the care for someone else so that I could make ends meet. So I know the pressures of, leaving your child and the guilt that comes with that, leaving a baby at home for someone else to take care of them, but having that pressure of needing to, be a provider for your children and being a working mom. I've also been on the flip side of that. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 4 years with my two small children that I had back to back. And so I know what it's like to play that role and have the pressures of being a stay-at-home mom. And I've been on, several sides of parenthood. So I've experienced guilt and shame and regret as a mother. I've also learned so much along the way, and I have some very valuable and, dare I say, priceless information to share. So, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as parents to be perfect. And the first thing I really want to touch on today and go over, and I want you to embrace, the number one thing is that you're not going to be a perfect parent. And the same is true for everyone else. Now, I don't care how shiny someone else might look like on social media. They're not a perfect parent either. I promise you that. Let's take, these different experiences and these different ideas that we think are perceptions of what good parents look like. For example, a parent who gets mad sometimes, they lose their temper and they yell. We often judge that as bad or wrong. Let's take the extreme opposite of that, of a parent who never gets mad and never yells. Okay? Most people would say, "Oh yeah, that's a perfect parent, is someone that never yells or never gets mad." Well, let's say a child is raised, because this does happen, where there's extreme instances where somebody is kind of a freak of nature and they never raise their voice. Sometimes I coach people and they'll say, yeah, my parents never yelled, or they never spanked us, or my parents never lost their temper. I really have people, believe it or not, that have that perception of their parents. But let's take and to me, that's extreme. That's the extreme other side of someone that, is very volatile, loses their temper. But let's say that somebody, never yells, never loses their temper, and that child doesn't deal with that at home. And they grow up and they get out into the world, and their boss gets very upset with them one day. Maybe they raise their voice a little bit, or they just know that their boss is angry, and they have a really hard time dealing with that confrontation, or the emotion of being upset or anger, because they didn't learn that as a child. So is that really perfect? I don't think so. So there's really, no matter what we do, no matter where we're at on the parental, spectrum or scale, we're never going to do it perfect. There's no, perfect way. Another common one I see with parents is they don't want their kids to see their emotion, or they don't want them to see them when they're upset or to cry. Are we teaching our kids to bury their emotions and it's not okay to be human? So stop expecting yourself to be perfect and just be yourself. Okay. If you're upset, it's okay for your kids to see you cry. Um, but of course, you don't want to be too extreme on either side. So just be yourself and don't expect yourself. Drop that expectation to be perfect. Okay. Number two, treat your child with the same respect that you expect. Whoa, what a radical concept, right? Now, I was raised in a belief system of like, you're the kid, you do what we say. And I think most people say that and they think that. But at one point in my life, as me being a parent, I remember thinking, wow, now just because this child is smaller doesn't mean their body is smaller. It doesn't mean they have a smaller worth or a smaller soul, or they have less wisdom than us. So it's not about controlling, it is about guiding. And so I started to realize that and think about my own role as a parent differently. So many parents think that because they've been on the planet longer, they are so much smarter and wiser. And if you look around, you're really going to see that that is not necessarily true. Our kids come from that divine love from the other side. And when our kids speak, we should listen to what they're saying because they can say some profound things. And I will be the first to admit that there have been many instances in our family where the adults were not acting so wise, and the younger kids stopped us in our tracks and basically spoke wisdom to us, and and it was profound. So um when we're looking at things on a soul level, not how long we've been here this time around, whether you believe that we've lived here multiple times or you don't, it doesn't matter. We are playing a game on planet Earth, and because we came in the game earlier does not mean that that soul, even if they're, a year old or 10 years old, it doesn't mean that we are so much more advanced and wiser than them on a soul level. So they deserve just as much respect as we do. So, yes, of course, we are not here, to guide or to control our children. We are here to guide them and to keep them safe, but not control them and beat them into compliance with everything we want them to be. So when we lose our temper, because that's super normal, and I lose my temper, sometimes I yell and sometimes I have a moment, but when we lose our temper or make what we view a wrong move, then say you're sorry. Genuinely apologize and treat this precious soul with the same love and respect that you expect and want. Okay. Number 3, and the final thing I'm going to go over today. This one is a big one, and I will, of course, be talking more about parenting in future episodes because it's such a big subject and there's so many layers to it. But the third thing I want to go over today is the very best thing that we can do for our kids and our children is to heal ourselves. This goes back to the airplane example of putting the oxygen on yourself first so that you can be there for your child. We are so off base when we pour all of these compliments, time, and energy into our kids having a great life, yet we're not willing to do that for ourselves. We want our kids to love themselves and know how amazing and great they are, and to have these amazing relationships and these amazing careers, and to really be confident and healthy, but we're not willing to put that time and energy and effort into ourselves to move through the things that we've experienced to really stand in our own power. So healthy, confident kids are raised by healthy, confident parents. Okay. Don't freak out if you feel like, oh my gosh, I've failed as a parent because my children are raised and gone and I'm a mess still. I feel ya. I hear you. I have been a completely different mother with my older two that are in college and they're raised and out of the home. I was in a much different place in my life with my younger two. So it doesn't matter. That's the journey. And our children know what they're coming into. Let's talk about on a soul level, looking at the bigger picture here. My older two, when I was really flailing and I made a lot of choices that I'm not proud of when they were younger. And I've made a lot of wrong moves, and I continue to make wrong moves because I am human. I do not do things perfect. But when we look at things on a soul level and we look at the bigger picture here, my older two, they knew that they were coming into the planet to a mom who was going to be a single mom, and that I was going to have a path of healing and they were going to be a part of that with me. So wherever stage you're at is beautiful and perfect, and whenever you choose to step on that path to healing and really getting a grip or getting it together or improving your life is divine timing, and it will affect your children at whatever age they are, whether they're in college or they're grown with their own kids or whether they're little. It doesn't matter. It's all beautiful and perfect. So they do not do what they're told. Kids do not do what they are told. They do what they see. So at the end of the day, that's what I want us to recognize and remember. So if you want your kids to love themselves, it must start with you looking in the mirror and honoring and loving yourself first. There was one time when my 23-year-old daughter was only 2 years old, and I will never forget this moment. It stopped me in my tracks. I was going through my divorce and I was so sad and I cried daily, like multiple times a day. I was crying. And I remember one day my sweet little girl saying to me as I was sobbing, she said, "Mama, please don't cry today, okay?" And it's crazy that in that moment, her words pulled me out of my miserable world and changed me forever. 21 years later, today, I still remember them. Of course, there have been many things over those 21 years that have happened in between, but that was the beginning of me learning this lesson that the best thing we can do for our kids is to heal ourselves. That day, I stepped a little more into my path of courage by hearing her sweet plea and realizing that my sadness was an umbrella and she was catching all my pain and tears, and that it was time to, shift and to step more into me remembering who I am, because it would benefit her and my pain was affecting her. So life's a journey and it's filled with many ups and downs, and it's okay, whatever you've experienced up until now. I invite you to let go. Let go of anything you're holding against yourself from the past and step on that journey to healing, to really create the life that honors you. Your children are watching, and show them how it's done. Much love to you. Have a fabulous week.